When I launched the Startup Radar channel, you were the first person to use it. Um, and you just dropped your project slash startup in the channel. So we were the first ones to, connect and try and situate, a good time to get on. So it's good to finally see you on here. And then it was great meeting you at FarCon.
Yeah, likewise, man. I mean, love what you've been doing with Podcaster in general and just on the platform, extremely active. And then with the channel, specifically, and with this, the podcast, I've been listening to the previous few episodes as well. So yeah, just great conversations all around.
I appreciate it. That's positive feedback. The thing is I'll take the recording, I'll throw it through this software, I refine it so that the sound is better quality, whatever, and I ship it. I hate hearing the sound of my own voice. I don't know if you're that way. I can't stand it.
Mm.
So I'm just like, ship it, like hopefully they like it, and I'm just gonna keep going until someone says you gotta stop. But no, I appreciate it. That means a lot. But yeah, so how was the rest of your FarCon?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I actually went last year as well, in Los Angeles, and I think it was a bit. I mean, a lot of differences this year. I think it's good to meet the folks continuing to build in the ecosystem, like who's sticking around, who are new builders, and then yeah, it's just markedly become a lot more base. Farcaster has effectively become the base ecosystem home over this year, and yeah, it was interesting to see that. I mean, I was previously at Coinbase for many years as well, and so just seeing that expansion of that company, and then now this ecosystem has been interesting.
Yeah. So a couple of things, getting right into it. A couple of things that I want to pick your brain on is just Farcaster as a platform slash protocol. Do you think that it's probably a good thing or bad thing? What are your thoughts on just kind of channeling itself into becoming a base centered platform? Do you think that there are opportunities for other networks to get involved? I know Monad just did an airdrop. What are your thoughts on that?
No, 100%. I mean, that was the original idea, right? I think it started out where wallets were on Optimism initially on Superchain, and then and yeah, Monad, VM chain, and Farcaster. Even I added, I think last year, the ability for users to verify their Solana addresses, so you could connect both sets of addresses onto your account. So the goal was to be a decentralized social for anything for everyone, right? And
100%.
not necessarily for one ecosystem. So. I think that's can still be valid. Just depends on how they leverage these different ecosystems. Where it's kind of become a base show is just because the base team kind of really adopted the platform from day one and first frame builders and they shipped the SDK to build frames. And so it's really become a flywheel effect since then. But there's still the option. I think there's over 100,000 Solana addresses connected to Farcaster account today. So yeah, still the option there to expand out.
I mean, the level of information that you just provided in that short time frame, like that's awesome. Thank you for the feedback on that. But I think one of the things that I'm trying to wrap my head around is because I agree with everything. I think it's first off, it's awesome that Base has taken the initiative, have done all of the things for Farcaster, and they should be rewarded for doing so. I think now we're because I'm in agreement. I think it should be for everyone. I think there should not be this like silo of, well, I'm a Base maxi, I'm a Solana maxi, and so because Base has already kind of taken the market on Farcaster, I have no interest. And what I personally, I think it's twofold from where I'm sitting. It's like, one, okay, that would probably just provoke Solana based devs to want to go and spin off something similar to Farcaster, which promotes competition, which I'm all for. But then simultaneously, I'm like, man, we don't need even more dispersed Web3 users because in my mind, it's this like catch 22 of, all right, well, if we're promoting competition, that's great. And that's what we should be doing to just build better products. But Web3 users are the ones that actually know how to use these things. How are we going to get the end users and the normies to fully immerse themselves? And I think for us to build each other up, what Dan and Varun have done with Farcaster is built a really smooth for the time frame that it's been. It's such a easy, simple process, at least from my end, that I think it would be great for end users to just start migrating there. But again, I don't know. This is just me stream of consciousness right now.
No, no, yeah, makes sense. I mean, like it feels like these chains, and I think Rish from Nina put out a cast where chains are a little bit like religions, and you kind of associate with one or the other, and you have a bit of a tribal element there. And so then you have the same apps coming out on each of these chains competing for mindshare, right? So especially for someone who's coming in from the outside looking in, it's like, why this over that? Why do we have three versions of the same decentralized exchange or social platform or so on and so forth, right? So all the more reason to try to get more ecosystems in the door and like have a unified experience for them, right?
Yeah, here's the thing. Your point with all of these dexes that are out there, my introduction to a lot of these dexes came from being a Solana person, right? Just transparently, no interest in Base, no interest in Coinbase. I was a Kraken person, and then I start getting introduced to this ecosystem, but I'm like, wait, this is more for me, right? And for a number of reasons, we don't need to get in that right now. But Dex Screener's being used on Base. I found Dex Screener from being in Solana. So to the point that I'm trying to make though is like there are going to be opportunities for competition to be created, but the one that is the best should be used on all. So Farcaster should at the same time welcome Base to be, that person or that entity that's going to be backing us and really building with us. That's great. That doesn't mean we're not wanting Solana users to come or Monad, making it more friendly. I'd be curious to see how they're going to do that. It's going to be a challenge, but yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm
Improving
ranting.
screener. I like that's kind of the if you think about it from a meta perspective, people come into crypto as a whole, largely even to this day because of prices of assets and assets going up and the ability to make money. That's usually the initial draw for people into crypto, especially for mass scale audience. And I've seen this actually play out. I've been working building in crypto for a while now, where during these kind of bull hype cycles, you just see more and more commonplace mentions of crypto overall, and especially asset prices. And this cycle in particular, if you regard the past 2 years as a cycle, we're actually in a WeWork right now, working on Gina, and I think literally 3 offices in a row across different days, I've seen Dex Screener on people's computers, completely unrelated to crypto, companies completely unrelated to crypto, where people are just looking at Dex Screener because they're interested. You know what I mean? And so I
That's
haven't seen a Warpcast screen on anyone yet, but the day we
it's
get that,
coming.
yeah, yeah,
I mean that is so bullish. That makes me so happy
yeah,
because
yeah.
coming into the space prior to, and I can't wait to hear about your journey from being at Coinbase, leaving, and now I'm like on Coinbase. Now I have see it's been really unique to see it from a new lens of like I never used it, never cared to use it, and then to have someone here that has been there from an earlier stage left. So I'm really excited to get into that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Just TLDR, I mean, I came into the space in 2016, 2017, where I moved to London to start this company called Token Analyst, which was in the early days, right after Ethereum had ICO. There were a bunch of these different ICO projects coming up where they were just doing token sales on Ethereum, and they were promising these big things, and then it was TBD whether they would actually deliver. And so the goal there was to just start tracking these token sale addresses and see what they did with funds. So we were one of the first companies to start tracking Ethereum as a network. So we mapped out most of ETH addresses and started labeling them, and just had a pretty big, pretty comprehensive analytics suite. And we did that for a couple of years. We kept growing it. We're effectively like a Dune Analytics or a Nansen before Dune Analytics was a thing. And then, yeah, through the brutal 2018 bear market, nobody's really interested in crypto. Tons of these ICOs became scams, etc. And we were like, what are we even looking at here? It's like a ghost
And
land.
does anyone at this point in time, does anyone even care to like understand this data?
Except for the extremely crypto native folks. And at that time, it was probably just a few funds. So these kind of funds that are active on the liquid markets, just scraping bits here and there. That was the real
Right. And that's a super competitive market, especially with the Nansons and Dunes that exist. Were they no, Dune was later, right? Dune
yeah,
came later. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, but
Both
yeah,
Joe and Anson, the founders, were just starting out. They had reached out to us. We spoke to them in the early days, and it's just like the whole ecosystem hadn't come up because DeFi wasn't a thing. Nothing was happening on chain.
right.
So it was all on centralized exchanges.
That's right. No, that's exactly right. So I guess from there, is that so what happens after that kind of sunsets?
So, I mean, so the main product eventually just turned out to be exchange flows. Like I said, everything was happening on centralized exchanges. The only action was on chain was what flowed in and out of exchanges. That was the main metric, and that was of any importance for folks who were trying to participate in the industry. And so we tracked that very obsessively, and we had like very comprehensive exchange flow mappings. And then around 2020, when DeFi was just starting to come up, we were like looking to raise our next round. One thing led to another, and it eventually turned into conversation with Coinbase. And then Coinbase said, we're just going to acquire your team. The guys actually just come join, and we did that.
That works. That certainly works. Amazing. So then from there, I'm assuming, just based on the model of what that was, you went
Mhm.
heavily into the analytics at Coinbase.
Exactly, exactly. So they basically created a team called blockchain research, and ended up like leading that team. And it was everything to do with data, blockchain data across the company. Anytime like a new chain is being onboarded, to understand that chain, or like L2s, for example, when you're like evaluating different layer two technologies, how do you evaluate those? Or helping with the Coinbase wallet, the commerce side of things, just different products that interface on chain, helping out on their initiatives. And then as DeFi kind of started to come up, just understanding all these different protocols and how they worked, et cetera, and how can Coinbase integrate with them.
Right. So you mentioned some of the protocols that are being developed and some of the things that are being done. You got to explore that right away. And I would love to hear more about like the things that you were interested in while you were exploring that, seeing these protocols being developed while you were at Coinbase, and then inevitably here comes Gina. So what was the inspiration while you were at Coinbase?
Well, yeah, to your exactly what you said. I mean, it's like it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose, right? And you kind of see all these different experiments being done. So 2020 was a bunch of decentralized finance experiments that were conducted at scale. You had Compound, Uniswap, Pool Two farms. You had NFTs. We did the NFT marketplace within Coinbase, which didn't work out, and then yeah, I mean Dex trading, perps on chain, etc. All these different experiments started to play out, and yeah, so I actively participated in all of these experiments, trying them out, and uh, and just seeing the pros and cons, and then across these years, crypto, especially with token valuations, it's tended to value infrastructure a lot more than the applications, just in general. And so we've had an overproduction of infrastructure. There's so many layer one and layer two chains, and there's too many chains for the applications that are existing in this industry, right? And so, like you said, we started this conversation. It's a bit of a tribal nature, but then it's hard to have 100 different religions. There's kind of like four or five major religions out here, and so in that realization, I think that was the realization where I was really looking for interesting applications that could move the space forward. Like that was what was interesting for me. Like what are app use cases, like the experiments that were done in the early 2020 that were happening in 2024. And Farcaster kind of stood out in that sense because it was one of the few applications that actually had a bit of traction and also was doing interesting things. They had launched frames then. You could build on top of it by connecting to the users' wallets, etc. So early 2024 was when I got interested in Farcaster and as an ecosystem and started to build on top of it while at Coinbase. I went to the previous Farcon while I was at Coinbase
Wow.
and
Yeah.
hadn't left still, and then basically after that started to experiment a lot more thoroughly, and then shipped the initial version of Gina in August last year, 2024, as the first agent that kind of responded to you when you tagged her on the feed, and left Coinbase at that time, and then went into Gina full time.
So cool. So what was the experience of while still being at Coinbase, going to FarCon? And I'm assuming like, this is your first time really messing with AI agents, right?
Yeah, so I mean AI in general is just it's a new technology in general, right? And as a developer platform, it's only been opened up over the last few years. So I mean I've worked extensively with data before, so that was the first inclination of Farcaster as an open data graph, social data graph. And we use this social data graph to make interesting applications. And so we tried a few frames that show data. We tried trading frames. We tried frames that you could send money to people. And then eventually that it kept growing where, well, in fact, the best way to interface with data is through an LLM. It's actually much easier. You don't have to write SQL queries. You don't have to do programming. You can just ask natural language questions and the LLM would answer. So initially it started out as just like a equivalent of ChatGPT, like kind of like a wrapper on Farcaster. But then we kept adding more and more data sets to this agent, which is when we kind of transitioned it to this personality called Gina, where she has awareness of everything that's happening in crypto and on Farcaster, and we kept going from there.
So for those that are just being introduced to Gina right now, is there like just a little TLDR of like what it is? What's the value prop?
Yeah, the value prop is basically an on-chain companion that makes things a lot simpler for you. So I think three main things, especially if you're already in crypto and you're interacting with Gina, is there's three main things she does really well. One is the research. So anything to do with on-chain data, historical data sets, evaluating a given token, a bullish or bearish thesis, whatever you want to do. The research side, she does really, really well today. She has access to market data, TVLs, yields, the entire gamut of everything that's happening on chain. And you can just ask it to her in natural language questions. And then the other side we focused on is the execution. So she can execute transactions on all EVM chains today with like a single gas currency. So for example, you could tell her, get me exposure to the top means on all EVM chains. And she will figure out what the top means are, ask you a few clarifying questions, and then do the transactions for you. So that's like the level two after the research. And then the final step, which we're still working towards, but hopefully want to get to, is automations, where today most of AI, you have to kind of chat to it and then it responds. And then you kind of have to be online to use an AI effectively. And the end state, I think, where we're heading towards in general, not just in crypto, but overall, is agents acting on their own. So automations is effectively Gina's acting on her own on your behalf. So you can tell her, hey, look out for X, Y, and Z, and then tell me if something happens, or in fact, here's $1,000, do this if XYZ happens, right? And she'll just do it. And you can be much more flexible with these automations than just say a traditional limit order. You can just say arbitrary things and she'll be able to monitor markets for you and then execute on your behalf.
Yeah, that's that's awesome. And so one of the things with that is talk about the landscape of this space right now in regards to like the competition for Gina, and what do you think you're doing that's going to be able to protect you and keep a moat around you compared to the rest of the space who are, I'm sure, trying to take a stab at doing something similar.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, we started out as one of the first agents on podcast before this. In November of last year, there was a ton of agents that came in and started posting on the social feeds, not just on podcast, but also on Twitter and other social feeds. And it's been this explosion. There's an entire subcategory now of AI agents in crypto. So in terms of like social agents, I think that ship is kind of sailed in terms of novelty there. There's some agents that have a personality, et cetera, but people can kind of tell when they're talking to an AI agent. It's nothing novel today. I think what's really novel is how useful can you be? I mean, there's the novelty effect of entertainment, which is fine, but then the usefulness is a different aspect. And so when you think of what you can actually use AI to do that's useful, on the one hand is synthesizing information, large swaths of data, numbers, and research reports, synthesize that for your personal use case, just level one. And then on the other side is taking somewhat fuzzy ideas of what you want to do and translating that into actual actions, which is the kind of step two of after the research, what you want to do with it. And so I think that side is where there's a lot of potential to kind of specialize in. And so what we see today, I mean, there's a bunch of these kind of agentic applications where you can sign in, you get a wallet, and then you can execute some basic transactions and maybe get some high level summaries of news in crypto, etc. But that's about it. This is all crypto AI agents today. Everything from, basically everything that I see today.
And one of the things that you're pointing out, and this is probably the most important thing on your mind, I'm just making assumptions here, but it's all about the user experience. So all of the capabilities that you have just displayed of what Gina's doing is all well and good, especially the roadmap, right? Making it seamless so that I don't even need to think. I can simply just, hey, here's $1,000. I just want a big return, and don't lose it. Basically, just don't lose my money, make me money. And I think that there's a lot of things that I can speak to on this. I think coming from the traditional finance space, I can tell you right now, finding success in this and being able to accomplish even like 10% of what you're set to do, it's an absolute disruptor to every bulge bracket firm and institution out there that has a wealth management department, truly. And thinking ahead 10 years from now, like let's just assume equities, bonds, all different types of investment vehicles that are in, traditional finance are brought on chain. Let's make that assumption. I think we're both confident enough to say like, that's where we're trending. Okay, great. So then what's the purpose? Now tell me, what's the purpose of a JP Morgan, a Goldman Sachs, and their financial advisors that are managing these books of business of, in some cases for a lot of these ultra high net worth books, like billions of dollars, why would I rely on him or her to make this judgment of this stock, love it here, you're going to love it there. You know what I mean? The human element of that, I don't want to put my faith into the human. What if, like, for example, one of the things that's a sensitive subject right now are ETFs, mutual funds, and the commission that financial advisors are getting off of it. You're doing
Mm-hmm.
so many things. Gina has the capability of doing so many things, of just cutting out the nonsense. You're getting
Mm-hmm.
rid of all of the, first off, like, bureaucracy. If you're able to, like, actively trade with things that are on chain being 24/7, so there is not this, like, start stop, let the markets, figure itself out. You're getting rid of dark pools and the trading that happens with institutions after. I mean, my mind's like racing on the capabilities of what Gina can be in, not just today for my personal use. It's just like, okay, all I care about as an end user, can I seamlessly connect my wallet? One,
Yeah.
like, can I seamlessly connect my Warplet to Gina? Great.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
After that, what am I able to do that no one else is able to do on any other platform? I can
Mm-hmm.
interact with it and say, hey, these are the trades that I'm interested in executing. Just do this. Great.
Mm-hmm.
And then even in the future of what you all are developing, by being able to say, hey, here's $1,000, go for it. I just don't want
Yeah.
to see anything back. Like, that's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders as a fiduciary. So, like,
Absolutely.
so I
Yeah.
would love to hear I mean, I'm getting anxious, like, just thinking about the level of pressure that Gina would have to endure, because there is still a risk. Investments are not guarantees, right? So
100%.
sorry to put you kind of on the spot here with this, but I would love to hear your thoughts on that. I know I just threw a ton at you, but
No, no, no.
would love you to talk me through that.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, that is probably the one reason why, the JP Morgan still exists today. I mean, it's the trust factor of like trusting high amounts of capital with someone that you trust and you have some level of insurance over, right? So versus an AI agent who could mess up and then you have no recourse on chain, like even more no recourse, right? So yeah, I think the one thing I think to what you mentioned in terms of like what you could do today is at the very least you can use Gina as a thought partner rather than go all the way and even in terms of execution, you can still use her as a thought partner to assess what you should be doing, how you should be thinking about it. ETH and some of the coins on ETH have gone up over 50% over the last week. Why? What's happening? What are
In
the
the last
triggers
like
for it?
8 hours, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
And
crazy.
people are like almost honestly like they're so conditioned to ETH being down all the time. They're like, what's actually happening?
But
Why? you know?
I'm sorry to cut you off, but this is the thing that's so messed up, is like the people that are conditioned for ETH to go down all the time. I mean, like, I still remember the day where ETH was going up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't, so it's funny how short sighted because it's so new and it's so early, even still, that like these trends and these bull and bear markets that we're faced with right now, like,
Yeah.
dude, it's not that big of a time period. And then also, if you are trained as like the degen early crypto adopter, dude, these like 80%, like 50% highs and lows, everyone's just kind of like finding a
Used
way
to
to be even keel, you know? But to your point, exactly, being able to, and this is, again, I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm just very excited about this, but like for Gina is, for you, the one thing you just relayed was like building trust. And like, why does JP Morgan, why does, you don't need to trade with Gina right away. Look at the insight and the research that
it.
she is going to provide you, and then like slowly work yourself into it. I think that's a
Exactly.
really great point to address there.
100%, 100%. And I think honestly, this applies to all of AI. The space as a whole is pretty hyped right now, and on Twitter, et cetera. Every other day, it's like the greatest things in sliced bread. This agent will disrupt the entire universe, and it can browse websites for you, shop for you, do whatever for you. And it's like, yes, but then if you actually try these products out, it's not quite there yet, you know? And so like it's more of a halfway point. So I think all of AI is in the stage of establishing trust. Can I trust it with my Amazon account to order stuff for me, or with my crypto balance to, ape into something for me? Like that's still being established everywhere. So why not just start using it today, start tinkering with it, and then slowly build up to that, right?
Right. So what gave you? So Sid, this is always, I think, I don't know if I've even asked you yet, but it just came to mind. But what gave you the confidence while you were at Coinbase? You had a great startup, got acquired, they built a team around you. You are, that's the goal right there. You know what I mean? Like, that is, That is exactly what a lot of these founders are looking for. What gave you the like, I got to go for it? What gave you the confidence just be like, all right, like Coinbase, like respectfully, you guys are awesome, but it's time for me to like go start another thing? What gave you that confidence to take the leap?
Honestly, it's like I was doing it for a while, and like I was with Coinbase for 4.5 years, and after a while, like you just kind of get an itch of wanting to do something impactful and useful, and just get going for it, and seeing what happens. And part of it was especially as this technology wave of AI is happening, wanting to be very squarely involved in it and building at the center of it. And yeah, there are initiatives within Coinbase to do so as well, obviously. But I think in terms of actually, I think the biggest learning, I learned this in token analysis as well. Back in 2016, nobody really knew about Ethereum or like its intricate workings or traces on transactions or how DeFi could be constructed. And we kind of learned it on the fly while building the start of an analytics company. You kind of learn things while building, right? So the
Of
biggest
course.
learning is had while building. So my thing was, if I want to be at the forefront of this technology wave, I should be building in the midst of it. That is the highest leverage thing I can be doing, and that's the most exciting thing. So I mean, why not take the jump and be squarely in the middle of this building and agent, right? So yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate. I love having people on and talking about, not just like the granular. Here's the tech. This is what it does. I love getting into that. Trust. I that's great. But it's really cool to hear everyone's unique journey of going from, hey, this is what I started. This is what I'm doing, and finding out the things that are in between. And with that being said, and not to put you on the spot, and you pivot, divert, however you'd like, but I think people are afraid of talking about the setbacks, the journey that it's not just I started this and then Coinbase bought it and then I started this and now things are going well. It's just I don't think that's as genuine. And again, if you like, you don't have to. But if there's anything that you can share, one story or one thing that comes to mind of like adversity that you had to overcome, I think that'd be really cool to share if you're open to that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't a rosy ride all the way through,
Yeah.
from retrospective, right? But yeah, like I mentioned to you before, like when we started our previous startup, we went through the pretty brutal bear market of 2018, and that was our first kind of go around with cycles in this industry. And at a certain point, I think like late 2018, Bitcoin was close to like 6K. Ethereum was sub 100. I don't remember exact, but everything it was a literal ghost town. It felt like most of the folks in this industry had left and building a company in the space. And at that time, we had hired like 12 people.
Wow.
And we had runway that we were burning. We had just trouble finding customers because there was no customers in this industry. And then at the same time, prospects, the future prospects. Where is this going to go? How do you predict? How do you roadmap? How do you project out what you should be building for in the future? Because nothing is established. Maybe everything just seems like built on a pile of sand, right? So whereas now, I think honestly, founders have it a little easier where there's a little bit more certainty. Like Bitcoin has established itself as a Lindy asset and stablecoin regulation. There's just so many things. In the last week alone, there's just so many things that have been announced, right? So back then, it just felt like, oh my God, what are we doing with our lives? You know what I mean? And then going into work every morning and then figuring out a roadmap on the fly. It's just like, oof, that was probably the bottom in terms of sentiment, in terms of existential despair, and no product market fit. You think you have it, but then you don't because the industry goes out under your feet. And then it's like the importance of, riding the market and having long-term conviction. That's why, I mean, the founders of Coinbase, they kind of went through that cycle so many times and had this conviction all the time to keep trucking along, right? Not pivoting and
Crazy.
yeah, that's the real alpha in the space. Is like the learning is stick around long enough, stay interested long enough, and you will be rewarded. That's it.
And I don't know how much longer it's going to be the case. Like, I feel like, and what I mean by that is, yes, for the people that are in like right now, stick around, you'll be rewarded. But when is it going? Like, because obviously we're all bullish here, but it's like there's going to be a certain plateau where it's just like all of those people, and then that's when we know we're going to make it, is when that plateau hits and
Yeah.
everyone's begging to get in. And you start to see it, and I guess the point I'm trying to make though is you don't know, for a baseball reference, you don't know what inning you're in. You don't know what quarter you're in. And that's
Mm.
always like an exciting but also terrifying thought. It's just like, how early are we? And then also at the same time, it's like, is it the first quarter or the fourth quarter? Meaning,
Yeah.
like, are people like, is this it? are we done? But now, like, you see these things that are so reinvigorating. Like, okay, Bitcoin's back over 100,000. What does that mean for the rest of the market? Like,
Hmm.
okay, everyone's pumping right now, which is great. But then, like, that's just reinviting and reintroducing builders to the space.
Hmm. Hmm. No, 100%. I mean, to extend your analogy a bit more, I almost feel like it's like seasons and games within seasons. So like, you have baseball or NBA seasons where things are great, etc. You're winning championships, etc. And then you have seasons where you don't, right? And so and there's not lack of interest in your team or your personal output. In a way, it's kind of like sticking with the sport. I think you can make the parallel to the NBA in the 80s. For a player to invest his time playing in the NBA or investing in the NBA in general, knowing what it would go through in the 90s and now the 2020s, post Jordan, post LeBron, etc. That's a bet you're making on the industry itself scaling, right? And so I feel like we're in one of those eras now where you have to kind of project forward. How can crypto be a part of the global human future and not just what it is today? And so
Yeah.
we're just playing a game today, right? That's it.
Let's just keep going with the sports analogies. One of the things that I think is a really good comparison is you think about the GOAT conversation of like, is Michael Jordan better than LeBron or is LeBron better than Michael? The reality is that they're two different things. And like the stage that the OGs were in when crypto was scaling, they were accomplishing things and they were doing things like they were walking so you could run today with Gina. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
that's another little tidbit that just came to mind. Going back to one of the things, I don't know why this came back into thought, but you kept referring to blockchains being religions.
Mhm.
And I agree with that completely. And one of the things, and I've said it a couple of times on here, and just basically anyone that I can put into a corner and just be like, oh, you got to look at it like this. Like, dude, I don't even know crypto. Like, I don't know blockchain. I don't know what you're talking about. But one thing that I'm really like interested in hearing is the thought of like, okay, there are too many chains. We can agree on that. Is there going to be a correction and is there going to be a consolidation period where we're going to unfortunately see chains, not be able to survive? I don't know, like for lack of better terms, like just die out. And do you think that that is a healthy thing? And do you think that that's probably what we're trending towards?
In aggregate, yeah, I think so for sure. But also, I've been surprised over this industry over the last few years. I mean, yes, decade, where sometimes things just stick around, and then pop up. You didn't think you'd see that much chain activity on Cardano or Ripple, but they're sticking
Here it
around.
is.
Here it is. Tron. Anyone in the Western Hemisphere has effectively written it off, but it is the most used chain for stablecoin payments in the globe.
Which is
So
crazy. I look at like my coin market cap, I'll just go and see the activity of these chains just from like a monetary, like just a price action level. And I'm like, Tron is still around. Like there is still activity on that chain. I've never used it, like personally,
yeah, yeah,
you know?
meaning I've used it a few times, but yeah, it is so used today that it might be the most useful chain in general for stablecoin transfers, right? So yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell, right? Like if the infrastructure exists and it's public infrastructure, it can just pick up usage at some point in the future. It's hard to tell to write it off completely. And also with market structure in general with this space, it's interesting. It's something that's not talked about much, but people often equate valuations or prices to usage per se or relevance. But just because of the nature of tokens being created out of thin air and finding some sort of stable equilibrium, you could find a token that gets no utility, that barely gets transferred or has any volume, but with a $5 billion market cap, $6 billion market cap, just chilling, just sitting around there for years. I think we had this with Ohm a few weeks ago, where it just crashed 98% in a day. Nobody was using that chain. There was just a bunch of volume on a few exchanges from a few market makers, etc. The nature of this space is assets can be created out of thin air, and then you can
They could
maintain
be
a value.
destroyed out of the air as
Yeah,
well.
destroyed out of thin air too. Like most of these valuations are kind of fugazi, right? It's just
Do you
like
know
it's
where
not real.
it's for sure? Do you know where?
I haven't checked recently, but it went to sub 1 mil.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
unreal, unreal, unreal.
Like that's, speaking of this, it's so funny to me, but Web3 is the most exciting space to be in, full stop. I don't want to hear any argument otherwise. Like, don't even throw the AI at me. Although, like, I think they're kind of integrated. Like they coexist, so it's not a good comparable. But the one thing I will say is this is at the same time such an unserious space. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? Like, and that's a really difficult challenge for us, I think. And that's where a lot of people beg, and I'm sure your thoughts are like, how are we getting end users that are beyond Web3? How do I make my product so seamless that, like, if I were to ship it on a legacy platform, like, it's just going to be immediately consumed and utilized right off the bat. How do I get to that stage? And I think that it's in some of the cases out of the hands of the founders and the tech slash product that they're putting together, right? Because if your culture, like, here's the thing, like, speaking of culture, Farcaster has done an incredible job within the Web3 space of creating an amazing culture, right? For
Mhm.
us to be able to just walk up to one another at FarCon, shoot the breeze
Sure.
for a bit. Amazing. Can't wait to talk to you on the pod, like whatever. They've done that. They've done an incredible job. How can we replicate that beyond just Farcaster? That's what I think is going to be the benefit for people like yourself that are trying to build here. It's like, how do we as a collective, because if you go on CT, if you're on crypto Twitter, it is just truly like the most toxic environment, at least for me. I like leave like my phone, I have to put it down and I'm like fuming because it's
Mhm.
just like, it's just the controversy of not even like crypto related conversation. It's just like
Yeah.
Twitter is like not healthy right now. And that's a whole other tangent. But I think
Yeah.
like one of the things that I'm thinking about is what are we going to do as a whole like sector to be more inviting towards the people that are used to things being very like professional or just like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I like, I mean, part of it is the appeal that memes have in general, right? And like they draw in more people just because they're fun. It gives them a break from their workday. I see people on Deck Screener during their workday, and like that shows to me that entertainment is part of it. And to your point of attracting more people versus AI, et cetera, versus other industries, the biggest dopamine driver over a lot of things, over maybe even scrolling on a social feed, is probably seeing number go up. That's the addiction that draws people in, unfortunately or fortunately, but whatever the case may be. But we have to be call a spade a spade. That is the number one in terms of human instincts.
I'm curious. Okay, so in your WeWork, when you're walking down the hall and you see the people that have Deck Screener popped up, what's the age? What's their demographic? Like, are they in their teens or are they in like art? Like, how old are they?
I'd say yeah, mid 20s, early 30s, probably top. Not
Well, no, I didn't know if it was like what I'm trying to, because I'm a dinosaur. I'm 33 years old. I might as well be 65. Like,
yeah,
so, but what I'm saying is, it's like, because I would assume, and I feel so silly, like being on Deck Screener, looking up like shout out to Dick Butt. Like I love Dick
yeah,
Butt, but like I'm like, dude, I'm a grown man. Like my parents at this point had 4 kids. Like, come on, like what am I doing? You know. And so I look at that. And obviously, we understand it. It's these are micro economies that we're participating in, but like who's using it? Is it 18-year-olds? Is it 16-year-olds? So it is encouraging to hear, like in a weird way, it's encouraging to see that the people participating are actually, our age too.
yeah, exactly. And it's hard to know whether that's hard to know disposable income of these individuals, et cetera, and like whether
Right.
it's meaningful money at stake. Even if they're micro caps or whatever the case may be, it could still make yearly salaries for them, right? And
Right.
that's such a big dopamine driver over like a TikTok feed or anything else that's competing for attention. That I think that people don't address that enough in terms of culture. That this is the fact. Like crypto draws in more people because of that dopamine driver, and then everything else is downstream of that in a way. Fortunately or unfortunately, they then come into ecosystems like Coinbase and Farcaster, et cetera, after getting exposed to that initial rush of okay, tokens prices go up, right?
Right.
And then yeah, I mean to your point, I mean establishing this welcoming culture is such a big thing rather than the toxic side of it, and like what you're exposed to in the space in general and what's possible, especially if you're building in the space or want to invest your time in the space. Having a safe space is a huge part of it, right? So lucky to have found this.
I cannot. I'm so thankful for it. And just talking about going back to the memes, going back to, that's what's bringing people in. I think again, just not saying it because you're on here, but genuinely, Gina is a thing, I would assume is the thing that's going to keep people, right? Like it's like okay, came for the meme, stayed for Gina. And like and no, and because it's like okay, I got exposed. I'm seeing all of these massive returns. It's real like especially for the non-Western people that are in love with crypto, which is a huge, huge market. They don't have like the risk. They don't have the risk tolerance that some people in the States do. And like that, $1 tip that Farcaster is offering is going such a long way, which is so cool. But how do they keep it? Instead
Yeah,
of them just going to, a meme coin that is super speculative, they don't know the dev, but they're seeing like it rise and then they throw that couple of bucks in and then they're crushed. right?
Yeah.
So simultaneously having a thing like Gina is going to say, hey, look, like we'll give you that exposure. We're going to get you in front of these things, and you can even do the due diligence with anything. Like for now, EVM, but I'm assuming like roadmap. There's going to be a lot more that's offered. Hey, like just use our platform, use the protocol. Here's what it is. You're going to get all the information you need, but we're protecting you. And I
Yeah.
think that is one of the things that is not seen, especially with like the meme coin trading aspect, is there's not a lot of protection.
Not at all.
There's no
Not at all.
regulation, as we know.
Yeah.
Not a lot in this domain, right? Crypto, the regulation there we could talk later, but for the meme coin space, like it is the wild west.
Yeah.
The pump and dumps, like I mean, when you got Luna and you got like or Libra, sorry, not Luna, Libra, and you got the Trump coin, even like the most wild stuff. And so it's like, what can you do to be risk averse if you have something like Gina that's in your back pocket? If I'm asleep and Trump is dumping, then I'm assuming that it's going to be
Yeah.
protecting me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And give you the context in general. There's 16 different Trump tokens. Which one is the real one? What does real even mean? Like so much of this context is taken for granted.
So you're
And
telling me that Gina has the capability of parsing through all of the different like coins that are
yeah, and identifying potential phishing or scams or rugs, etc. That's like a baseline, right? That we take for granted, but
oh my gosh.
super helpful. And then yeah, not only that, I think like over the last few years, the reason we have this ecosystem is because people have been scared in terms of a regulatory standpoint of launching tokens that have real utility or value flows, and that's slowly changing now. But all the more, I think later this year, we're going to see an onslaught of real world assets, especially stocks come on chain, US stocks. Like
100%.
stablecoins have been the most adopted product for crypto globally, apart from Bitcoin. And US stocks, I think, are the next big thing, right? In terms of like everyone wants access to the S&P in some way, shape, or form. If you can offer someone in the Philippines or in Africa, etc., access to that in a tokenized form, even
24/7. 24/7.
exactly,
It's
even
going to
Robin
change everything.
UK, they're trying to do that. They're trying to tokenize US stocks and have it tradable, so there's no need to go through an intermediary, right?
So
So
this is something that's definitely on your radar. That's something that is interesting you with Gina. What do you think from your perspective? What would be the most, logical, methodical way for the traditional markets to move on chain? Because like for me, my mind is like, is there one chain that they need to just dump everything over? Or is it going to be something where you have wormholes where you can have different chains that allow you to still participate? What's that going to look like?
well, because of the nature of assets being the way they are, they probably need to be custodied by some custodian, say a BlackRock, etc., and then mint the tokenized version of that on a chain. I've seen some tokenized stocks coming on Solana now. There'll probably be some on Base as well. But I mean, as an end user, you shouldn't really have to worry about what chain an asset is on. It's just this is what it is. Here's what I want exposure to. And so that I mean, in cases like that, that's where tools like Gina can actually help abstract this kind of chain infrastructure side away, and then you just have the information, you just have the asset itself, right? So
Oh my gosh. Like, and look, forgive the smooth brain here. Not a dev, can't get too deep in the weeds with the tech side. So forgive the ignorance on a lot of this, but like from where I'm sitting, so you're telling me right now, and I also am not aware of like these assets being tokenized this quickly. So right now, what's happening is that I'm just trying to think about like the money, like the cash flow or like the value flow. So these huge institutions like BlackRock, they will go acquire these assets, these stocks, they'll tokenize them, and then the networks like Solana, like Base, even they will go acquire them from BlackRock and bring them on chain. Am I getting that? Is that right?
it doesn't have to really do anything. The network is just there.
So
Issue
BlackRock's just putting it on chain.
putting it on chain, putting it on
And
chain.
so again, I'm not aware of this. So did BlackRock put those assets on Solana?
It's not BlackRock in this case. I think there's another company called Superstate. It was the ex Compound founder. I just saw that yesterday.
Okay.
Rob Lerner. Yeah, they put a company called Solana, Soul Strategies. It's a stock that's traded, listed. I think on major indices. It's not going to be trading on Solana as a token. So this is one example where there's like an intermediary which custodies the actual shares, and they'll just issue the tokens on chain. And then you can program the token contract to be arbitrary, where for example, you may need to have KYC to access the token initially, or some other forms of like contract logic that needs to be implemented. But the fact is, it's tokenized. It's 24/7. You can build financial products on top of it. So you can borrow on it. You could do strategies on top of it. You could have a basket of blue chip stocks and meats, whatever you want to do. That's exciting, especially for the space we're building in, where now it's like, sure, get you context on whether a coin is a rug or not. But then tomorrow or a few quarters from now, it's what's the earnings reports? How does my basket look? What's my exposure looking like? Help me understand this. And that's where it can really be useful.
This is, yeah. Oh my gosh. The reaction here is just like, oh my gosh, we're here. Like it's
Yeah.
actually happening.
Yeah.
And that's so exciting. And I think you're in an amazing position right now, considering, the way I think of Gina right now, just with its access and real time updates is tell me this, what's the point of Bloomberg? What's the point
Yeah.
of a Bloomberg terminal, right?
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
Gina, like not in so many ways. So like the way I'm thinking about Gina is you have a Bloomberg terminal like pillar where you are providing all of the research in real time, instantaneously. All I have to do is think like ChatGPT. I want to know
Exactly.
about this. Boom, everything's popping up. So there's
Hmm.
the research element that Bloomberg has. The thing that you're also beating them out on is thinking about it from an end user. Like I don't need to worry about exchange, central or
Yeah.
decentral. I don't need to. If I have assets in this wallet, do my research. Great. I like the asset. I like what it's saying. Okay, execute it. And then the other aspect of it that I think, and I would like to hear more about like where you're at with this stage of just like being a passive investor, right? So there's different elements, like there's the active and passive investor, right? A lot of
Yep.
people tend to rely on financial advisors, or there's other applications in fintech that allow you to be a passive investor, but basically just say, hey, I trust you to allocate my portfolio properly. Here you go, best of luck. Like I just trust that as long as I see number go up, I'm good. So having
Mhm.
those three things going on seamlessly within your bot, like I that's a disruptor like I haven't heard in a long time. And I think that's also because I can speak to the financial like system a little bit more. I mean,
Yeah.
that is something that I have not. It's really impressive, man.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean that's the hope, and that's I think where we need to get to, right? And it's on us to execute well, and like you said, make the user experience seamless enough, make sure it's understandable. All these little things in between, the execution, the idea is there, and the potential is there. There's a few players, like you mentioned, playing in the space, but if we execute well, I think there's just so much to do and
And I
so
wasn't
much.
even saying that as a matter of like, you're doing it on chain, you're doing it in
For
real time.
sure.
And then also, not to mention, you're doing it on like I would argue, the most successful social platform in Web3, right? So you're
Oh,
already building with a user experience, like you already have the or you already get a
yeah.
case study right in front of you, right? Like you already have people interacting that are giving feedback. You're months ahead, if not years ahead, of whoever is in that legacy tech space that are going
For
to
sure.
try and implement. Like they don't have Solidity devs, they don't have people that know how to build on chain yet. I mean, they'll figure it out, but no, you're so answering my own question earlier of like what moats do you have, and I think
Yeah.
that would be a big one, is the fact like you already have the ecosystem right now. You're Dude, that's so cool. Sorry, I'm like still trying to it's been a long week. I'm like, oh my gosh, like the aha moment. So no, this
Great.
is really exciting, man.
And part of the thing is you kind of have to go with the wave, right? It's like you got to ride the wave a little bit versus trying to go against the wave a bit. And that was the learning in 2018. We were just like cast ashore, and like the wave was underneath us, and so we're like continue to build, etc. But then no matter what you build, you won't get traction unless there's a mega trend happening, right? And so this is already underway now. Things are becoming tokenized. Gold is the second most tokenized thing after stablecoin. Stocks are rapidly coming on chain. What can you do with this? And then there's this mega macro AI wave happening of the tech and models becoming better every day. Every 2 weeks, there's a new model out. Why not combine the two and try to play in the space and create a good user experience, right? Yeah.
Man, I am so pumped. This is so it's man, this is so cool, Sid. Like I'm
Yes.
genuinely. So no, I think right now, if can we take a little bit deeper? I don't know if you have the ability to share your screen. I'm still new to this. Do you see it
Yeah.
on your end? If you're
Let me
cool with it, maybe we
Yeah.
could show where Gina's at right now
Mhm.
for the people that haven't used it yet.
For sure. Let me see if I can share. Cool. Let me know if you can see it. Nice. Yeah. So this is like a interface of the Gina wallet. Basically, you have a wallet. You can fund it with some balance, and then you can ask her what she can do.
So it has your history as well. I think that's another thing to point out. So can you reorganize like you do in GPT or Chat GPT of like retitling each one.
Exactly. Retitle each one. Also, we want to add folders as well, so you can have categories. Use it as a journal of sorts when you're making certain actions, etc.
It's a wrap. This is a wrap. Oh my gosh. Yeah, sorry to cut you.
No, I mean that's the scene. I mean, effectively like a GPT, and then the stuff that we're working, the UX part that you mentioned, is things like I don't want to have to type everything, so let's try to smart suggest actions that you can do, and then you just click buttons instead of having to type. So the AI itself generates actions that you might be interested in. So let me view my portfolio. What all can you do, etc. I'm just going through this flow here,
Of course.
just clicking the buttons that it gives me versus typing anything. So yeah, I mean, she has access to a wallet. She can analyze chains and she can transfer, swap, etc. And then get you the data aspect. So like I mentioned, I mean, I'll do a new chat. Just like for example, on-chain stablecoin yields. What are the best stablecoin yields for single-sided? This is a
And it's
pre
scanning the entire internet right now.
all chains. She has access to data sets, DeFi Llama, Dune Analytics, CoinGecko. So she'll just
Manson, all of the, yeah.
yeah, all the main data providers that as a being in crypto you would kind of want to have access to. And then she does the research, and then inside this you can kind of see what she's actually doing if
Oh,
you really
wow.
want to do anything.
Yeah,
So she's
yeah.
getting the relevant data sets. There's a ton of data sets. She's writing SQL for you. She's doing a web search to complement that, making sure that the work she's done is correct. And then eventually she should output a table. Yeah, with TVL, base APY, what the scene is looking like for different assets, etc.
There's Morpho. Yep.
Yep,
Shout out to
Chain,
Coinbase and Morpho.
Coinbase. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and a bunch of different things. And then again, she generates these follow-up questions that you can go to. So yeah, the new chat, but effectively, yeah, basically you have this. You can just keep digging down different research rabbit holes that you want to go through, whether it's prices or yields or portfolio simulations. This is all just on the research side before getting to execution itself, which is like, all right, get me some exposure to arrow on base with 10% of. So we'll see. So this has, I have like $130 here.
Yep.
She'll figure out what 10% of that means, do the math. And this is just like a single chain example, but yeah, she should be able to execute that swap for me. And we're on the screen right now. I could just also just like exit and move on, and she'll just do it in the background
Okay.
for me.
So
So
for
yeah,
so for someone, let's again, this is where this is my mind is just being blown right now of how now that we're having this conversation in real time
yeah,
is so for example, end user hasn't been exposed to web3 at all,
mhm,
first time getting into crypto, they're introduced to Gina, right? They don't know staking protocols, they don't know like where, they don't know which direction to turn, right? They have money, they're interested in putting it on chain, let's just assume they put like a couple $1,000 in USDC, just got their Coinbase account, just got themselves a wallet. So I look at this, connect my Coinbase wallet. Here I am. I could literally just say, build me a portfolio.
yeah. Construct me a portfolio. I'm kind of risk averse, but I kind of like these memes a little bit.
I know nothing about memes, so just give me a couple of popular ones. I saw this Moodang one a while ago.
Exactly.
And it will just seamlessly put that portfolio together.
Exactly. Exactly. And give you some suggestions, give you the universe of assets that are available, what's legitimate, what's not a scam. All that stuff is in the background, right? So yeah, it's gotta be the arrow exposure right now. I can see it here. It's just one example, but because it's a free form, like input anything, you could theoretically just go to town on it and just keep asking her various open-ended questions, explore. We've had users do a lot of crazy things, like just extremely deep research, deep dives into theses and like projections. Even like if I had held this asset instead of ETH over the last year, how would I
Yeah.
have done? What's my beta to Bitcoin? Just a bunch of different things like that,
And
right? So
Gina's able to
yeah,
comprehend
she's
and
basically a
deliver on
data
it.
analyst. You can do the math. She can do write SQL for you. She can, yeah, project that out. Yeah. So that's
I'm sorry
yeah,
for the added of element, the emotional effect here. I'm trying my best to keep it cool. This is so amazing.
for sure,
So
man.
so yeah, with all of that said, here's where it exists and sits today.
Yeah.
what are some of the things on the roadmap right now that again, not to expose the trade secrets and secret sauce, but what are some of the things that you're willing to share to get the audience and to get the users excited?
Yeah, I mean the few things, the two big ones we have top of mind is one is adding Solana support. She can execute transactions on all EVM chains now. If we can get Solana in as well, then you truly get to that kind of abstracted universe where you don't have to worry about what chain something is on. She'll just do it for you. That's level one. And then level two is getting these automations going. So potentially starting with some basic monitoring automations, monitor for prices or monitor for events, and then let me know when something changes that I'm interested in. And then moving on to finally automations with execution. So automations with small amounts of money and automate those things. And then finally, it's we still have to explore this, but now she's in an application format now. In Farcon, we made her into mini app as well, so you can access her within the Farcaster feed. But TBD on this, maybe we explore this, is to go on different platforms, effectively like a kind of headless agent. So you can access her on Telegram, on WhatsApp, various apps, wherever you are, you have your wallet, you have your assistant available to you. You have to still explore it out, see how it goes there, whatever is valuable for users. But I think Solana and automation is coming up next, right away.
So thinking about this for founders out there, just when you're exploring different revenue streams, are you specifically thinking just transaction, just getting a fee off of the transactions? Are you exploring other routes? What's that conversation been like with your team?
Yeah, at this early stage, it's almost more just like getting folks trialing different use cases. I think the models that has worked in this industry before is transaction and taking a small cut of that. And also in AI in general, there is a sense of in the back end, just for your context, I mean, she's plugging into, she routes based on the user's question, she will route it to different model providers. And some of those model providers are pretty heavy duty, like they're talking O3, Claude 3.7,
Oh
etc.,
yeah,
which are expensive, which you'd have to pay for anyways. So you're kind of getting AI credits bundled up inside this one thing.
absolutely.
Potentially to charge for those inference credits, depending on the complexity of the query. That could be an option as well. But right now, it's just it's free roam.
Of course, but I'm assuming that's not for long, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you gotta run
yeah,
a tight ship here.
for sure,
It's
for
great
sure.
to, and that's the sacrifice. I think it's very strategic, very smart of you. Get these people on it, get them exposed to how amazing this thing is. But
Yeah,
eventually, I would assume, right? And as a consumer, I'm willing to pay, right? A comparable, like if I'm paying in the range. I mean, honestly, like this is for an off the camera conversation, but like yeah, like you could do a lot with that,
for sure, for sure.
and
Yeah,
that makes perfect sense.
yeah, yeah,
Man, this is so cool.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah, we
Sid,
have. It's yeah, it's exciting. The whole space is exciting.
I'm so, and just, I think this tugs at my heartstrings just because of where, like, my past of like seeing how much technology has revolutionized the financial space and especially with what you're about to accomplish and already started to accomplish with Gina. It's so awesome. This has been really exciting for me and I'm encouraged to see what you're doing here. And I'm super thankful for you being on. But yeah, I mean, we're going to have to talk a lot more. I got to learn more. If there's any up and coming betas that I can get access to, that would be so awesome. And I'm just so excited to see where this thing's going to go. Genuinely pumped. So excited, man.
Thanks so much, and appreciate you putting this together and taking the initiative here. You came up to me at FarCon, you recognized me, and like, and in general, just in general, putting together the channel, the platform. I see where this is going. I think this is going to become a hub for Farcaster as a platform for builders and like Startup Radar. There's no other place to kind of become a coalesce in terms of a hub for those builders. A share what they're working on, and then also collaborate and have this ecosystem develop. Right? There isn't really a that kind of lightning rod. It's kind of dispersed all over the platform right now. So I see where you're going with this, and excited for you as well, man.
I
Appreciate it.
really appreciate it, man. And look, you're welcome on to come back anytime if there's ever updates needed. You're the OG. You are literally the number one guy, the first guy that came on and was just like, "Oh, we need this," and that was
Yeah,
so encouraging. That's what I'm gonna be completely honest. That message, you don't realize that's what actually kept me going. So like, I
wow.
was kind of indifferent, and I was kind of like, like talking to my wife, I'm like, should I do this? Like, I don't even know. Like, I don't even have a podcast mic. Like, is this something that I should do? And then she's like, absolutely. Like, go
Hell yeah.
for it. And so, like, that message really, she saw that and she was like, you got to go. You got to do it. So,
That's so
really
cool.
thankful for that. And genuinely, that is the goal here. I want to make sure that you have and founders have a place where they're comfortable and confident in showcasing their MVP and not getting just like hot takes. I don't want people to just use it and be like, oh, it sucks, or like, oh, this. It's just like, no, like give critical feedback. Founders, if they have thick skin as they should, will receive it and iterate according to that, right? But then additionally, like, and again, I'm going on my rant again. I could go here for days, but like people that are building amazing things there should be a beacon for that, and
Yeah.
have VCs, angels, other types of institutional money be exposed to the things that you all are building. And that's to your point, like you just said, Farcaster is a place for builders. Like, and that's so true. Every podcast I've done so far has been a unique one where all of these builders are so capable of doing incredible things, and they need access to a community that hopefully I haven't built it yet, but will be a place for them to
It's
succeed.
happening. It's happening right now. It's happening right now.
Amazing, man. I
Yeah.
really appreciate the confidence, dude. I'm so pumped to keep the conversation
Let's
going.
go. Yeah, you can just
Awesome.
do things, right? Let's go.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can just do things. Amazing, man. Well, don't sign off yet. I'm gonna hit stop. But yo, thank you so much for doing this, Sid. I really appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, great convo. Appreciate you as well. Let me know if I can help in any way, or likewise, even with the other side of things, right? The fun
Of
side of things.
course.
Happy to intro.